So then, this is Dark Souls 2, and I'm gonna attempt to take a look at the progression systems. And I say attempt because I am by no means an expert of Dark Souls, neither 1 or 2. I've played around the 150 hour mark in Dark Souls 2, and I've probably played in excess of 100 hours on Dark Souls 1. But in this game, that is basically nothing. But it should be enough to get to grips with the basics of how progression works. But what makes this video so difficult, and it might be a little challenging to follow if you're not familiar with the game in some areas, is that progression in this game is very different depending on your focus. For example, PvE focused players and PvP focused players will have completely different mindsets about what is good character progression in this game. What is it they're looking for? How is it they choose to level up and spend skill points, and this sort of thing is completely different depending on how you're going to spend your end game. Additionally, in a game that's renowned for being a little frustrating and challenging, to me there jumps out a kind of 4 types of players when it comes to progression systems in this game from people I've spoken to. We have got the good classic min-maxers, the people who are looking to get the absolute most bang for their buck. Bang being power and buck being character level. Really, it's not soul level like it used to be, and I'll explain this later, but basically the player versus player matchmaking, and I believe also the co-op matchmaking, try and tier you with players of the same experience level. So you're trying to be as strong as you can possibly be for your level if you're a min-maxer in PvP. Now some of this is statistical, some of this is other stuff. So we've got those guys, because it's a great game for that. It's so deep and so rich. There's so much you can do there. We have the classic Fashion Soulsers. So prevalent, I believe there is a Fashion Souls Friday on the Dark Souls 2 Reddit. I think it's on at the moment. These are the guys that just wear the shit that looks cool. Totally get it. I see why you do it. The visual design of this game is really, really nice. I really like it. So there's kind of progression for those guys. We have the Fun Soulsers. These are people that just find weapons that they love the feel of, and they just try and play for whatever's fun, and they try and progress around what's fun rather than what's powerful or what's min-maxing or how things look. And then we have what probably makes up the majority of the player base, but definitely probably not the majority of the Reddit and the active player base this late on in a game's life cycle, and these are the Help Me Soulers. These are the people that just want to get through the game. They don't care about the min-maxing, they just want to be as powerful enough to progress and actually get the game completed. Now, yeah, like I said, I know this doesn't account for the Reddit, I know this doesn't account for the hardcore player base, but in reality, about 25% of people that own Dark Souls 2 have completed it, and that is a much higher number than I believed it would be, considering considering the length and the frustrations at certain areas of the game. Having spoken to everybody I know that has completed the game, I do not know anybody in person that considers themselves a Dark Souls fan or a hardcore Dark Souls player. Everybody that I know that has played the game, that I haven't met through the Reddit and stuff, has been this type of person. They just played through it, spent loads of statistics, and they just leveled up as much as they could. So we've also got to try and take into account these people and look at how a very intricate web of systems work for both PvE and PvP focused, and then 4 different mentalities with regard to progressing. So we'll crack on. Dark Souls 2 features, for me, 3 distinct styles of progression. We have acquisition based equipment progression. Now what I mean by this is you find new stuff. And it's not about crafting system, it's not a reward system, it's about finding new stuff. Now yes, some of this is done through rewards, some of this is done through vendors, and we'll look at how all this works later, but it's about acquiring new gear and equipping it. The next thing, we have a resource-based enchantment system. Now this adds elemental effects to weapons, so like you see this little flame here and this flame here. These change the elemental damage bonuses of weapons and how weapons scale in accordance with statistics. And we also have the primary progression system, which is currency-driven statistical progression. This is what would traditionally be handled by the XP in most games, but in Dark Souls it's not. It's a currency for all intensive purposes. Now, how many souls am I carrying? 40k. Let's just move somewhere. Now, I'm sure most people will be familiar with the concept because it is what the entire game is built around. But basically, when you kill a creature, you're given souls. Souls are the equivalent of XP. Yeah, souls are the equivalent of XP. And basically, you can spend that XP only when you get back to town. So if you see, if I kill this guy, God, I really forgot the bloody buttons there. I got given a few souls. If I let these guys kill me, and this is the only problem coming back to the start of the game. These guys, please kill me and my pants. Any minute now. Yeah, if these guys kill me, basically what's going to happen is all these 40,000 souls I've got here, I'm going to drop and lose. And this is one of the most, I guess, almost unique systems to Dark Souls, and the game is built around it. And it's a system that if it was in another game, I would consider actively condemning, but because everything intertwines with it, it kind of works. It definitely doesn't work as well as it did in Dark Souls 1. Now, I'm going to try not to focus on what this game doesn't do so well in comparison to Dark Souls and Demon Souls. There's 110 other videos out there, and if you want to listen to somebody tear on level design and stuff like that, you won't have any trouble finding anything. I'm going to try and look at it as a standalone game and how it really works, because progression is one of the things I see in Dark Souls 2 that it does fairly well. There isn't any major issues, and it really is the core system of the game, and that's quite rare, and I quite like it. So what you may have missed there is, if you haven't played the game, I just picked up all the XP I dropped by clicking on that green glob. Now if I'd have died again before getting that, I'd have lost all my souls and lost all my XP. But we're going to come back and look at souls-based progression a little bit later in a bit more detail, because there's quite a lot to it. So we have, in addition to these kind of things, the game splits down into vertical progression, horizontal progression. On vertical I mean getting more powerful, horizontal I mean getting more diverse, getting more contextual, getting a greater variety in what you can do. And horizontal stuff is just a term of progression I made up, and it's stuff that falls somewhere in between. It's when you give people variety that allows them to overcome a challenge. So it's not just variety for the sake of fun, it's variety for the sake of... It's variety that really helps the player to progress, to deal with challenges and things like that. Vertical wise, we have attributes that grow. This system is the most convoluted and confusing attribute system I have come across in years. I love it and I hate it. As the min-maxer part of me adores this. The chaos of having 50 million statistics displayed on a page and far more hidden, and crazy hidden relationships between all these and hidden effects of these. That's a fun puzzle to work out, and players that are fans of the Souls series and have played previous games and come into games with some idea of how all these things are probably going to work will like this. But this page in particular could be daunting as hell to a new player. and we're going to come and take a really detailed look at how statistics work, because the statistics are at the core of what makes this game so confusing for players min-maxing. So this is all leveled up using the soul points that we looked at before. You have equipment upgrading for upgrading the statistics on equipment, and this literally just involves taking a sword that you like to a blacksmith in a safe zone and saying reinforce my equipment, and then he'll boost the stats. Now you'll probably be able to see under my webcam there if I kill it, and that'd go from 78 to 86, 78 to 86 on physical and fire, and that's basically how it works, and there's a cap on how many times you can do that per weapon. Again, more on that later. We have accessory acquisition, which is a major part of vertical progression in this game. There are an absolutely extortionate amount of rings which grant passive effects, you know, from increasing max HP to increasing carry weight, stamina, resistances to elements, more damage, equipment degradation, all sorts of stuff. And a lot of the game, and a lot of builds within the game, because builds are a big part of this game for the PvP community, even the PvE community as well, is around finding the perfect rings to go with your builds and getting access to the rings without being too far into the game and stuff like that. So more on that later. Diagonal progression now is the enchantment system we talked about earlier. I'm going to show this off, but basically it's putting fire on stuff to deal some of your physical as fire, and stuff like that, and changing out the scaling. It definitely helps you progress and get more powerful because of the way the scaling in the game works, but it's also kind of a diversity thing, so you can have different types of weapons for different types of bosses, because different bosses do have different elemental resistances, and it's very noticeable in some of them. Next up we have spell acquisition. This is something that we're going to talk about more later, but basically I can't do it because I'm not on a caster class. Where are they? Where can I view them? Inventory they show up as. Yeah, so they're even dealt with through the inventory. I have all these cool spells. I can only equip a certain number of them at the time, but a big part of the horizontal progression, or at least the diagonal, is finding new spells. And a good example of why it's diagonal and not always vertical: Lightning Spear, Great Lightning Spear, and there is another one here which is Sunlight Spear, and then there's like a super Sunlight Arcing Spear and all this crap. Yes, they're more powerful, and that would imply this is pure vertical progression, but they're balanced to the point where you get less uses on more powerful spells. So unless you've got very specific builds, it's not always vertical, and some of it is just about diversity. Getting a greater variety of stuff is definitely a big part of the spells. Catching people by surprise in PvP because you have a spell nobody expects you to be carrying, it is a massive part of what makes the PvP in this game fun as a caster, and what makes builds fun in Dark Souls in general. It's just doing stuff people didn't expect. Horizontal wise, this is my favourite system of the entire Souls franchise. Weapons of the same type. So if we see if I got both of these equipped, I do not. So let's equip it. Let's get rid of that and that and that and that. No, let's just unequip them. Been playing too many games recently. I keep forgetting what I can and can't do. So if we take a look at the basic longsword, it swings like this. Fair enough. And then if I switch over to the Hild Knight sword, same class of weapon, swings very differently. And this has a massive impact in Dark Souls, and a lot of the game, particularly within PvP, it's definitely still very prevalent in PvE, is about finding a weapon with a hitbox and moveset that you really like. For example, what makes this weapon here, the longsword, so damn good, even though you get it 5 minutes into the game, is the fact that it's one of the only longswords to give you access to thrusting attacks which can be used down corridors, and they do very good damage against enemies with low stab defense and stuff like that. So moveset and that horizontal progression is crazy. And it will be impossible to cover all the different moves and stuff like that. All we're going to get a chance to do is talk about how this changes gameplay. There is also special weapon effects. Different weapons and armor. Is this going to let me do it? Because I've not got the right build on. Some of them have very unique effects, and it's not going to let me. Damn it, that's a shame. For example, this weapon here will fire a lightning bolt when you do the heavy attack with it, when you've got the appropriate statistics. Now I might be able to... How much do I need to do it? 14. I don't think I've got enough to get me to 14. Not yet. Yeah, so you have things like this where you're looking for special weapon and armor effects which change the builds. Very much like you kind of get on legendaries and MMOs, if anybody's familiar with those. Or in games like Diablo, they're not quite as impactful, but they exist. You know, there's weapons that are invisible, and there's things like that. Next thing we'll eventually get around to looking at is armor types. Armor types, there isn't definitive armor archetypes in this game. It's more of a gradient than set categories. Yes, there are robes. Yes, there is lighter armors. Yes, there is heavy armors. And yes, there is super heavy armors. But most of the stuff just falls on the line somewhere. And it uses kind of like a weight system, a poise, all sorts of stuff, which we'll talk about. So that's all the stuff we've got to cover, so it's probably going to be quite a long one, so I'm going to try and go through the attributes as quickly as I can. Now, I don't expect anybody to be able to learn all of these attributes at the speed I'm going to have to go through them, and I'm definitely not going to be able to go through all the intricacies of how all the attributes scale. Because I could not remember it all off the top of my head. I would have had to put significant amounts of time in it, and that is with this being like my primary focus. It's very confusing. But what I want to show is how the diminishing return system works on all the attributes. Basically, the more you invest in an attribute, you get less back and less back and less back over time, the more and more you invest. And I mean, this works predominantly by using a soft cap system. If anyone's not familiar with soft and hard caps, hard cap is when you get to an attribute and increasing it further doesn't do anything for you, or that it won't let you increase it further. And in this game, the hard cap for all attributes is 90. I believe it does exist. There is hidden hard caps and things like that, which we'll talk about. I want to talk about why diminishing returns and soft caps and some of the scaling systems in this game with regards to attributes work to create a hybrid combat system and hybrid builds in a game that otherwise would have completely ignored them. And this for me is the shining star of the way the attributes are managed in this game. With a game like Dark Souls that's focused around melee combat, let's imagine this spear scaled with dexterity, and only dexterity, and that was the way it worked. And this sword here scaled with strength, and that was the only way it worked. If I was going to use this spear all the time, I'd just scale up dexterity. And then I'd be crazy to scale up strength to use this sword, because I could increase my uptime on using the dexterity weapon and invest far more in that, dealing far more damage per second overall without worrying about swapping weapons and stuff. Now, between using the moveset thing we talked about earlier, where different weapons have different advantages in different environments against different foes, depending on different builds, and using this kind of soft cap diminishing return system, what I really want to look at is how Dark Souls accomplishes creating hybrid builds, because I truly believe hybrid builds in this game are done far better than solitary builds, builds that focus around single attributes and single play styles. They are supported, but they just don't feel as well supported as hybrid builds. And I seem to remember Dark Souls 1, I say seem to remember, it has been years, doing a better job on solo builds than this game. But maybe not quite as good a job on hybrid builds, but again, it's been a while. So, attribute time. Fun. I am going to travel to a location that lets me reset all my stats. Now this works in the game with a consumable. You can get back all the levels that you've spent, because long and short of it is, you kill stuff, you spend points. Spending points gets you a level. Spending points, basically you get to allocate one in strength, one in dexterity, something like that, and each time you do that you go up a level. This gives me all my levels back and lets me reallocate my points for the use of a consumable that there are a finite number in the game unless you know one of the farming methods. So this is what I'm going to do just so I can demo how some of the statistics work. To do this, before I do this, I should probably equip a mixture of weapons. So there's a dexterity weapon, there is a hybrid weapon, and here is I need a strength weapon of the same kind of power. Of course, you don't have any, so that's unlucky. Yeah, that axe will do, it's close enough. It's not perfect, and it's got some lightning on it, but never mind. Okay, so attributes time. Yes, determined as ever. I would like to start again. You can have a soul vessel, and here we go. Attribute number 1. Okay, attributes split into 3 types. We have what I call core attributes, and this is the column over here on the far left. All these that I'm highlighting. Core attributes are ones that can be changed through leveling up. These are ones that you specifically allocate points into. Then we have something over here in the column which is actually called attributes. Very confusing. And these are what I call derivative attributes or performance attributes. These are the values that are affected by the skill point spending. Now I'm going to give plenty of examples of this, don't worry if you've fallen behind or your head's gone already, because my head went about 1,000,000 times when I was trying to get ready to do this. And then in addition to the core and the derivative attributes, you also have hidden attributes and statistics, ones that do not show up anywhere and have only been discovered through rigorous player testing, but have a massive impact on how people build. So I'll try and go through this in a semi-logical order and do the stuff that people will be familiar with. HP. HP is this here. HP is a derivative attribute in this game. It's the total damage that can be taken before dying, and it is gained primarily through Vigor. Vigor is this VGR here, the thing with the hut. Now, Vigor is the first one that implements the diminishing returns. They all do to some degree, but Vigor's a nice example. Now, Vigor is the primary contribution. Every other skill does give a contribution to max HP. So even if you say, if I up Vitality, this red figure, I keep pointing at my screen thinking people could see me, this red figure here is increasing, even though, sorry, I'm increasing Endurance. But this is how it works. I'm currently level 9 in Vigor, and this has given me 904 health based on what we can see, what I've got equipped and that sort of thing. Between levels 0 and level 20 Vigor, I gain plus 30 max health, so we can see this going from 904 to 934, 30 max health per attribute point. Then between levels 21 and 50, I think I only gain, is it 20 points, 21 and 50, yeah, so I go from 54 to 74. Diminishing returns have kicked in. When I get to level 50, I really hit the hard cap here. I hit a very harsh soft cap. I know that sounds ridiculous to say, but there are multi-caps in this game. And as you can see on the screen already, these are not explained. You're just expected to pay attention and notice that, you know, it's changed from giving me 20 HP every time, and now when I level up, it only gives me 5. This means further investment in this is probably not worthwhile until you've hit the soft caps of everything else. So this is it. This is the way that the primary attribute contribution soft cap works. Additionally, Vigor, HP, gains a contribution from every other statistic. For every other statistical point you spend in a core attribute here, so if you can see, increasing attunement from 2 to 3 will give me 2 extra health. And then basically, once I'm increasing a statistic which is over level 20, there we go, over level 20, so if I'm going from 20 to 21, I now only get 1 health. So there are also soft caps that exist in the secondary bonuses of leveling up skills. Nothing is ever stated. Even if you go on the help menu, all it says is an attribute that determines HP. What this doesn't tell you is all the secondary benefits of Vigor, and the player is once again expected to just notice. Now let me demo this. Is this going to show anywhere? Yeah, it is, thank God for that. We can see down here that HP and Petrify Resistance have these grey bars over them. What this means is these are the attributes affected, so it indicates what gets affected. But not all systems affect all attributes on every level up. Not every core attribute affects every performance or derivative attribute on every level up. So players just get crazy confused when they're learning the game. And the amount of videos I watched when Dark Souls 2 first came out of people going, just watch me spending my points and let's all work out what the hell is happening with this. The amount of data that people collected so the community could get their heads around how things scaled was absurd. Now, I'm going to go through this all, but before we do, let's remember 2 things. This is currently looking at this system from a min-max perspective. This is me looking at it and going, I want to understand everything that's happening here, because I'm going to build for PvP and I want to be as strong as I possibly can be for my level, not level experience. If you already understand, then you'll know that, but anyway, we'll get to that later. There is another group of players, and the other group of players are just slapping points in what sounds good, and they're going, that's a big number increase, let's have that, and they're not worrying about the implications or the hidden effects and things like that. Now from a UI perspective, showing this kind of, the blue increases is good because it highlights it, and at least people know what they're getting to a basic degree, and they're going to throw points in what looks good and what looks like big increases. But it can lead to some under and over spending, because you can't always judge the relative values of these attributes based on what it says here. For example, people don't know when they're starting out the game how to assess the benefits of attack, physical attack strength, this attribute I'm pointing at here, versus the benefits of a cast speed point, because they don't understand how anything scales because the game doesn't tell you. But they don't care, they just spend points. So I think it's approachable enough for novices, but for people min-maxing, pretty much my primary complaint with the progression systems in this game is that they've built this, and it is beautifully intricate web of exposed statistics and derivative statistics and hidden statistics that can all be exploited to create unique and diverse builds, and almost nobody's ever going to get the same thing as you, but they do not give the players anywhere near enough information, and people end up having to do absurd amount of testing to work it all out. Now I might be wrong, there might be kind of a strategy guide that comes out in Japan or something, but judging by the amount of videos we had to watch of people dodge rolling and trying to work out what gave you extra iframes and stuff in the first couple of months, I'm just going to go ahead and assume this was not well explained anywhere in the world, because I couldn't find it when the game first came out, and it took the community months to work out what everything did. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of testing. But let's continue, and we'll look at why it gets even worse than it initially seems, with not explaining its soft caps. Vigor also increases Petrify Resistance, as we can see. This is increasing, secondary benefit, jobs are good. Next we're going to look at Stamina. Stamina is obviously the total number of actions the character can take before they need to rest. And I believe in Dark Souls, when the character runs out of stamina, does he hunch over and have I been playing too much Dragon's Dogma? I really need to go test that. Does it? I'm sure he does. I'm sure he takes a breath, but I'm going to go test it in a minute because it's crazy. I can't even remember that. I've been so in the statistics all night. Okay, so stamina is a derivative. It is gained predominantly through endurance. And again, you hit a very, very strong endurance soft cap at 120 stamina, which is 20 endurance. After that, it only goes up by 1 point instead of 2. So further investments become really weird, and then basically stamina gain just drops off. So that's odd. This is okay now. Stamina is also increased through rings. Not many. I believe it's just the Dragon Ring set. There's a set of the first, second and third Dragon Rings that you can find in the game, which increase the maximum stamina to an exceptional amount. It's probably the best ring in the game is the Dragon Ring 3, minus the 2 ridiculous ones that you get from completing the game without bonfires and turning invisible, turning your primary weapon invisible, that sort of thing. So we have this. We have endurance. What else does endurance do? Oh, endurance increases physical strength as well. Physical defense, sorry. Now physical defense is... Think of physical defense like armor value. Not armor value. It's like it's the body's resistance to... It's the body's resistance to physical attacks. Armor is this defense down here versus strike. I keep pointing at my screen for some reason. Versus strike, versus slash, versus thrust. So this is with armor. Up here is without. Now what this does is it basically just reduces the amount of damage that you take from physical attacks. Now the current estimation, again, never explained anywhere in the game, is that for each point you get in physical defense, it reduces the amount you take from physical attacks by 0.2%. Now, there is a hidden diminishing returns point. As far as I know, nobody has been able to pinpoint the diminishing returns point. Now, this doesn't mean that there is a diminishing returns point for spending points that give you physical defense. And this is why it's not visible. It appears like you always get physical defense through leveling up stats, but what you don't realize is that on above a certain level of physical defense and armor all tied together, that armor adds all up to a damage reduction value through a formula, and somewhere in between there's a diminishing returns point. So even people that have managed to achieve 1400-ish armor still do not take 0 damage. So somewhere in there there's something that stops you capping out. You can reduce it a hell of a lot. You know, from like 121 physical defense, if you get that up into like the thousands, instead of taking like, I think it's about 360 damage. If you'll get that from about 360 down to 80, down to 90. So it does reduce it by a massive margin, but it never reduces it to 0. What else have we got? Oh my god. Oh good, it also affects poise. Poise is another statistic with a crazily hidden amount of effects. Poise is basically, see, what does it say? An attribution that determines endurance. The ability to withstand the impact of attacks. That's great, very specific information. It means that if you're swinging the weapon and something hits you, poise is a value which determines whether or not your swing will be interrupted. Poise also determines whether or not when you're running with no swinging or standing idle, if something hits you, whether or not you'll get full stunned or micro staggered, which you stumble a little bit but can still continue to attack. It never explains that poise works like a meter. It's very much like a stamina or a health meter. You have a poise value, and if your poise value is, let's say, my poise down here in the bottom right, keep pointing, it's 34. You have 34 poise. If somebody hits you with a 7 poise attack, you know, you lose 7 poise. You go down to 28. 20. Oh dear, that's embarrassing. That's not 28. Let's move swiftly on. 27. If you go down to 27. and then when your poise gets depleted completely by an attack, then you get stunned. Now poise regens secretly in the background. I think it's about half a point a second, or 0.5% a second. Is it half a point or 0.5%? It doesn't matter. It regens passively in the background, and anytime when you get stunned fully and the character goes woo for a few seconds, then you get all your poise back, so you can't be kind of stun locked anywhere near as easy. Now stun locking is a thing that happens by exploiting the poise meter within the PvP scene. You use two weapons. Typically you use two weapons with very high poise damage that hit fairly quickly, and you can continually lock people's poise meter down before they get out of the micro stagger after the stun and things like that, so people just can't fight back. And this is the type of thing that I love, that the game is complex enough that builds can be built to do this, whilst it's not something that happens in every build. You've got to be so deliberate and meticulous at what it is you try and create. This game can be a min-maxer's dream in that regard. So we have poise. There's also other stuff that's exposed in this game that you'd never know unless you read it or you were lucky enough to notice, because you're very tactile. The heavier your weapon, basically, the harder it is to interrupt. Some of the heavier weapons have something that some of the communities call like hyperpoise. So like an ultra great sword, which is extraordinarily large, extraordinarily heavily, it's very unlikely that you'll ever get interrupted during an attack. You'll simply get stunned after it. You also get poise contributed massively from your armor and your shield type. This poise here just adds to your base value of what gets added to your armor and stuff. So that's poise. Nice and simple. Next up we have Vitality. Vitality's fun, and this is where I start to like this game versus Dark Souls 1. Let's kill this for a minute. Vitality predominantly manages equipment load. Now equipment load is the total amount of equipment that you can carry at any one time without incurring movement penalties and other penalties. Now the goal isn't that it's not a you get to the load point and then all of a sudden you can't move Skyrim style. There's graded things, and again they're never explained. Now I'm starting to see why they're never explained, to be honest. Never explained to me. The purpose might be to not overwhelm more casual players or new players. However, I've got to ask the question, why add a help button here that lets me look at these in detail if you're not going to give me the detailed values? Even if you're not going to show me a very detailed tooltip because you want this help button to help new players, give me an option that says turn on advanced tooltips during help or something, so that you can go in and it'll give you all the values and the statistics and what this bloody does. I'd love to see that. So yes, Vitality and Equipment Load. Equipment Load is pretty cool. It does a bunch of different stuff. In part, it handles stamina regen. Now, stamina regen is stamina regen is the first hidden statistic. This shows up nowhere. There's nowhere you can check what your current stamina regen is in the entire game. It just exists. Now, luckily, there's not many things that change it. There is one ring, as far as I know. It's the Claw or something ring. It's just a green flowery ring. I'll grab it in a minute. And there is also the equipment load. Now, if we back out of this menu,
now go along.
Go away. We can see in the bottom right, I have this percentage, 44.9. There is a linear scale. So this is no longer diminishing returns on something. We're now working on linear scales. There is a linear scale between 0% and 100% load, which impacts how long it takes for your stamina to regen from 0 to full. At 0% load it takes 2.3 seconds, and at 100% load it takes double, so what, 4.6? Never explained. But hey, that's what you get. And obviously, if you're at like 50%, it takes somewhere in the middle. A good old 3.4, 5. So this is nice. Again, I don't know how many players would notice it unless they're min-maxing or looking out for this sort of thing. So we've now got diminishing returns, multiple levels of soft caps, hard caps, linear scales, oh, and of course we have these things now applying on the core attribute stage. Some of them apply at the performance attribute stage. Some of them apply during the damage formula. So things are getting really confusing. Next up, oh, equipment load also has hidden effects. If you're at 100% equipment load, you guys just do it. Boom, boom, boom. So here's how I move at 50%. This is kind of your very standard system. If I move and manage to pile on the fat, so let's give me some big heavy weapons. This should do the trick. I'll have a Black Knight halberd. There's 92. Give me a big fat helmet. 96. I got anything heavier? I do. 101. Right, at 101, I'm ultra fat rolling, which is actually just a normal fat roll. I can still backstep. Oh, I thought I couldn't backstep at 100%. Let's just increase that a little bit further. It might be a little bit higher than I thought it was. Yeah. Okay. This might not be the case anymore. As you can see, the distance I'm travelling is absolutely pathetic. But what this will do is when you get the 70% value, it might be 68 or 70. I think it's changed a couple of times with the patches. But you basically, instead of rolling quickly, you do this, what's called the fat roll in Dark Souls, where he kind of flops and bashes his heels on the floor before he stands back up. So that's the 70% boundary. The sub 40% boundary, I need another weapon. So here's the normal roll. I believe the sub 40% gives me fast roll. There might be a slight speed increase there, but it vastly increases the distance that you actually roll. So if I stand on this twig here and I take everything off, and I roll forwards, you can see I made it here. Now if I turn around and try and go back, Fat Man mode, so much equipping. As you can see, I have not PvP'd in a while because my equipping is so bleeding slow. 107%. Okay, let's just really take the piss. So it's ultra visible, shall we? There we go. 120% is the completely you're gimped and can't move any more value. So I didn't reach the twig, and I took a step as well before I rolled. And my character doesn't even seem to run anymore. I seem to be walking. I can still sprint, but I'm now walking. And he turns like a truck. So we have stuff like this, and roll distance as well is a linear scale as far as I'm aware, between 0 and 100%. Roll speed is fairly unaffected up until a fat roll point. There might be a couple of small increases in there. Oh, that's why everything looks weird. My mods aren't on. Oh, good, because that's probably why the game hasn't crashed. Okay, so that's equipment load. Equipment load obviously being handled primarily by Vitality. Now, Vitality, again, has soft caps along the way, giving 1.5 equip load for the first up to 29, 1 point up to 49, and then half a point up to 70, and yeah, that's basically, and then it halves it again. But okay, no, let's talk about it, because that's where the next system comes in. Up to this point, every increase in points spent, we'll show it, every increase in points spent has directly impacted the statistics it's supposed to improve. So if you look at Vitality, every single time I spend a point in Vitality, equipment load goes up. But when I hit 71, you see, I'm increasing that and nothing's changing. There is other systems in place that allow attributes to increment based on like every other point spent. There's even more complicated ones than this. And this is why things like are just starting to get mental now, and it's just so difficult to keep up with, and try and remember how all these intricacies work. I mean, you might ask the question, does it really matter? No, not to the casual. Yes, definitely to the min-maxers. Yeah, obviously vitality also contributes to physical defense and a little bit of poison res. Now, poison res and stuff is really weird. I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to crack on through attunement, because attunement's a weird system. Attunement basically is the number of slots you have available for equipping spells. So we can see that slots is here 0 currently, and my attunement level is 2. As this increases, I'll get more slots. This has set points where it grants you an extra slot. This is another system of incrementing change in Dark Souls. So at fixed points. Now these fixed points are level 10. They're very consistent. They're level 10, level 13, 16, 20, 25, 30, 40, 50, 60, 75. So we've got an increment by 10, an increment by 3, 3, 4, 5, 5, 10, 10, 10, 15. Now interestingly, what this does mean, because they're not laid out on a linear scale, they're at kind of there. When you do a cost efficiency graph on these points, they start off very cost inefficient, and they peak at 20 points invested, 25 and 30. They equate to 1 slot per 5-point investment. So if you're going to invest in vitality, spending even the 16-point mark, you get 3 slots for 16, so it's just over. But the most efficient, the most value for investment is here. It's in this mid-range, which is yet one more thing in Dark Souls which is different again. Traditionally, throughout the rest of the system so far, we've seen that the initial points spent are the most, or the highest investment, or the best investment. They're the best investment for currency. That don't make any sense. That's why I'm not in finance. Whereas this one peaks in the kind of 30s range. So this is bizarre, but it works okay, and at least it's visible enough. And peaking early means that you can still use hybrid builds and stuff like this by using specific rings, because you can also unlock additional attunement slots, these things just called slots here, which are called attunement slots in full, by using rings and stuff. Now I think there's only 2 items. I think there's like a black witch hat, or a black hood. Is it a hat or a hood? I think it's a hat. That gives you an extra attunement slot, and there's also the Southern Ritual Band. I think it's the Southern ones. Southern Ritual Bands +1, +2, and +3 can give you additional attunement slots at the cost of spell uses. Now if you're not familiar with the combat system, you can only use a spell a certain number of times between checkpoints, and basically this trades off having more spells by slightly punishing spell usage. So if you do use those items. So we have this. Attunement also increases cast speed. Cast speed is, without a doubt, probably the most mental statistic in this entire game. Oh no, agility. Agility's batshit crazy. Cast speed though, utterly never explained. Cast speed receives contributions from faith, intelligence, and attunement points, and scales really weird. Now, I think cast speed at the start, yeah, it goes up every 2 points spent, so we're back to the 2 points spent system. Except, as well as the 2 points spent system, cast speed also increases every 4 points spent of every agility, of every faith or intellect. And they can be added together. So if you spend 2 in faith, 2 in intellect, then you get a slight cast speed boost. So this has now got a system where not only is it only giving you changes incrementally as on level ups, it's now only giving visible increases. And no, actually, it's only giving increases every kind of like 1 in 4 if you're leveling up these skills, and it's only a secondary benefit for intellect, but it just gets very confusing. And this is in part because the way Dark Souls handles numbers, it doesn't use decimals for a lot of things. I mean, yes, there's a lot of decimal usage in here, and this is not programming taught, this is just normal mathematics, and I say decimals. It rounds everything down. Not everything, but it rounds most things down. Some of it rounds it down at the end, some of it rounds stuff down beforehand, some of it rounds it down before it displays but keeps the actual value. And yeah, there's another reason why Dark Souls does crazy shit with numbers and statistics, and why it took everybody so long to work out all the formulas and different systems of incrementing. Is that all that attunement does? Am I missing anything? Yeah, we also get some curse resistance, and that's probably got a diminishing returns in there somewhere. I think how's curse res work? I think we're going to come to that shortly, because it works the same way as poison, bleed, petrify. Yeah, poison, bleed, and petrify. Spell cast quantity. So not the number of spells you can equip, but the number of times you can cast a spell between checkpoints is also influenced by attunement. Never exposed. You have no value, no character-based visible value, which is spell cast modifier or something like that, as cast number modifier. And actually, I do not even think it exists. The way I think spell cast growth is managed, as far as I can tell, is each individual spell is given a number of casts for each for attunement brackets. Now let me give an example. If you have a spell that can be cast 10 times at level 0 attunement, that spell will have allocated to it a value of how many times it can be cast at level like level 11 to level 19 and level 20 to level 49. So that plays a part. And then I believe that the weapons and that the items that interact with the number of spell casts, they do not take away attunement points. So they do not take away the core statistic attunement, because if they did, it would mess around with spell casts. They must have another value somewhere in between spell casts and attunement, which is kind of an attunement or a attunement value, like a clone of attunement that only applies to spellcasts, which then gets affected by the item. So it goes, here's your core attunement, and then here's my speed attunement and attunement slots down here. Now I have another attunement value which is cloned from over here, sorry, mirrored, and then we add on the equipment, and then we go over to the spells and we use this value which is equipment plus stats, and this gets used. Try keeping track of all this as a caster, trying to work out when you're hitting your caps and things like that, and imagine knowing when to expect spell increases. Things get a bit crazy. Next is the most entertaining one to watch the community learn, and the one I probably have the most respect for the guys that did this, because this, unless they macroed it, this must have been so hard to work out. Adaptability is a new statistic in Dark Souls 2. Adaptability basically, let's get off down here. Adaptability feeds into loads. It feeds into poison BNS, which is poison bonus damage. This works on another system, which we'll come to later. It also feeds into all the kind of poison, the bleed res stuff, fairly high. It gives a lot of contribution to all these points. So adaptability is a great defensive stat for the auxiliary status effects rather than the elemental status effects. Now it also feeds into poise, but we talked about poise earlier. Now agility. agility is crazy. Now, agility handles two things. It handles evasion and it handles item usage. Now, from an item usage perspective, the higher your agility is, the quicker you can drink an Estus flask. It also works for some of the buffing and other consumables, but as far as I'm aware, not all of them. So you're never really sure which ones are going to get affected. Again, never explained. It's only through watching videos and frame by frame breakdowns and stuff. Now what agility also does, that the primary reason you invest in adaptability is to up your agility. The reason you want the agility is because agility impacts the number of iframes you get in your rolls. Iframes, for people not familiar with them, they're invulnerability frames or invincibility frames that basically make you impervious to damage and impacts from all attacks for a set number of frames. A set number of frames, it's something that's kind of come across from fighting games, as in stuff like Tekken and Street Fighter. It's one of the reasons why Dark Souls 2 works at a fixed frame rate and isn't variable, because it has a frame-based data to keep things very consistent. Aiming to keep things very consistent. I know hitboxes take all that away, but never mind. Now agility. From a functional perspective, you get 5 iframes at 85 agility, 85 being the base level of agility you start the game at. So here, at 0 adaptability, I have 5 iframes. 5 iframes on a... Oh, holy shit. Is this... Ignore the frame values, because I'm not sure if this was a 30 or a 60 FPS game on console. I'm playing it on PC. Let's talk in time. It gives me about 0.16 of a second, so an eighth of a second. Is that an eighth? Give or take. About an eighth of a second. This is, by all standards, a very small margin whereby the player is forced to aim a dodge roll. Now, I know very skilled players can do this, but even on the same side, or I guess on the opposing side, very skilled players cannot do this in Dark Souls 2 every time on their first playthrough, and it's because the hitboxes for a lot of things... Oh shit. Weapons, both player, PvP, PvE, bosses, the hitboxes of everything are not the physical models. They are a box drawn around the mesh, and they are the wrong size very, very often. And it's one of the reasons why the combat in Dark Souls 2 can be a bit frustrating compared to other games. But I don't want to get too into the combat. But basically, this is why agility is important. Because the hitboxes can be a bit messy sometimes, and the animations don't always indicate where the hitbox is supposed to be, so the bigger iframe margin and the bigger invulnerability margin you get, the better. Now, I think I played through the game, I think I got mine up to about 90. I put about 20 points in normally, but this all depends on your starting class. I get mine up to about 95, which gives me a very forgiving 1/3 of a second. And I find 1/3 of a second is enough that you can, as long as you've kind of come up against something once, or you've seen this weapon before, you can kind of judge where the hitbox is going to be at what time. So this is pretty forgiving. Now, if players wanted to, they could super invest and get this all the way up to half a second, which pretty much most people would be able to do, but there's a lot of diminishing returns and the investment would be absurd. Now, this also applies to the back step, but you get different invulnerability percentages on the back step, and this is the shuffle back we were doing before. Now, here's why this adaptability is batshit crazy. You get a base number, or a base duration of invulnerability, even if you do not invest in adaptability. Agility only increases from 85 up to 86 when your attunement plus 3 times your adaptability. So let's take a look at this in my case. So it's my attunement plus 3 times my adaptability, plus 80, I think, is higher than 85 or some shit like that. So it only starts to actually play a role when your agility is higher than 85. In reality, my agility would be lower than 85 based on the agility formula. As you can see, I'm going up through these stats and nothing changes, but it just it pushes it up to 85. So you still have some iframes, so it doesn't have to change its formula. Now this is another example of a different way stats are handled in this game. There is a stat floor. I have never seen a stat floor in a game before. Yeah, I've never seen an artificial stat floor in a derivative statistic. I lie, I have. World of Warcraft, at some point during Cataclysm, did the same thing with PvP resistance values. So they gave everybody a base level of Resi, is what it was called. Although, no, see, it was still just didn't work like this. They just gave everybody 25% Resi for free, and then any Resi you got on top of that just added up. So they gave it a stat floor. But this game has it as a functional stat floor, but you can actually have a value below that, and you have to work your way up to the level it's gifted you before you can improve it. So that means on adaptability from a functional perspective, the first 10, how many points if I'm playing Bandit? The first 8 levels, 7 levels, don't get anything back. So the early investments on this one are absolutely crap. You just don't get a thing. Okay, you get some bleed res and stuff like that, but it doesn't affect you in the early game when you're doing this anyway. So yeah, this again is another move that peaks at a different point and uses yet a different system now. Okay, actually I've got it here. The formula for working out attunement is when attunement, so attunement plus adaptability times 3 divided by 4 plus 80 is greater than or equal to 120. Sorry, no, when attunement and adaptability times 3, so adaptability times 3 plus attunement is equal to greater than 120, then agility begins to increase on one formula, and then when that value is, oh, it's just shit. I've just explained that terribly. But basically, what I meant to say was when adaptability times 3 plus attunement is less than 120, like it is for me here, it uses one formula, and when it's greater than 120, it uses another formula to do a soft cap. But lay on top of that formula, we have this weird hidden skill floor that we talked about, so it all gets very confusing. But again, this becomes an attribute that players don't think for the first time to invest in, and I know I didn't, and I found dodging very difficult in this game when it first came out, because I was working on this 1.6 second of invulnerability, because this agility statistic wasn't increasing, so I couldn't work out for the life of me how to get it to go up, because, you know, I invested a few times in the thing that said it did it, and nothing changed. So I was like, what the hell's going on here? And so I hate this for newcomers. This definitely needed some tweaking. Even if agility had been displayed as this actual value in it, it is still giving you a minimum number of iframes at 1.6. It would have been much better, because then at least there would have been the placebo effect of it improving, even though it was staying the same. And it might have continued my investment. Oh, my leg. I've been sat on my foot, and I broke my foot a while back. That is very stupid of me. Okay, what else have we got? The bleed, the curse, and the petrify resistances work on yet another system, and they call this the tick system. The they get a primary contribution from adaptability, but faith and other stuff does impact it. So let's have a look. Let's find one. Yeah, faith gives me bleed resistance. Vitality gives me poison. Vigor gives me petrify. So here's how it goes, right? Every 4th tick of faith, 2, 4. Yep. So let's get 1, 2, 3, 4. Every 4th tick of faith gives me a value of bleed. Now, this gives me a set value of bleed, so it'll give me 6 bleed resistance. 6 bleed resistance. Up until I have a certain value of bleed resistance, and then it goes higher, and then it goes lower, and again there's another system which just becomes batshit crazy, and I'm going to be in all honesty, I do not understand exactly how the curve looks for that one, because I've never really cared about these resistances too much. They're very situational. If a meta took over in the PvP scene whereby bleeding or poison was getting used all the time, and there were some stages where people were just doing the whips and things like this, having a laugh. This stuff does get used and you can build it up, but it's very difficult to actually judge what the formula is and work out how much you should invest and how much you're just wasting. So now we start getting into the fun stuff. Now the fun stuff, so we start getting into, I've probably been here an hour already, I don't know, I can't check, I daren't check, Shadowplay will die. Strength basically gives you your HP contribution like every other stat in the game, and it increases this. This, I can't even go across to it. Here you go, physical attack strength. This is the value that scales strength-based physical weapons up. Now there is a lot more to scaling in this game, which we're going to have to come back to because it's tied into the weapons, but basically this works pretty well, and that there is some caps. The soft cap for strength that is pretty much just accepted as the place you kind of, unless you're going crazy, you stop. You can see there's a cap at level, so I'm going from 70 to 73 to 75 to 77 to 80. Yeah, there's some inconsistency, but basically I get 2 a time up to level 40. Sorry, strength is bloody weird. You get a bit more than the soft cap hits, so it scales up to the soft cap and then drops off very quickly. So now it is just weird. Or is the soft cap 50? Okay, I might be wrong. The soft cap for strength might be 50 because that looks like it still scales pretty well. No, it doesn't. It's scaling terribly. Soft cap is 40. So yeah, this is quite well. Dexterity functions exactly the same way as strength in that regard, except it gives you poison and bleed bonus as well as the dexterity bonus. Now the other thing worth mentioning is that the strength scaling as a progression tool allows you to use extraordinarily heavy weapons. Weapons have usage limitations in this game. Now this is an interesting system, and again it's something that gets a little bit confusing and isn't explained very well through the investment menu. If we're looking at a weapon here, we can see that, let's look at something heavy. What have I got? I've got anything good. Okay, so we got this, the one with the red symbol next to it, the Drakewing Ultra Greatsword. We have a 20 and an 18 here. This means it needs 20 strength to use, and 18 dexterity, which is the little hand. This is I actually do quite like this system. It's one of the more black and white systems in the game. Most thing in Dark Souls is about gradients, and this is you either can or you can't. Now they've added some leeway, and I love leeway in this for builds. If I two-hand this weapon, it cuts the strength requirement in half. So you can, if you can use a weapon in 2 hands that you definitely couldn't use in 1 hand. And some of these strength requirements get exceptionally high, up into the 40s, and I believe there might even be some crazy hammers in the 50s. Some of the great hammers might be really high. I love this system of cutting it in half for 2-handed. It creates quite cool builds, and it creates some intricacy to the combat and the building that wouldn't be there otherwise. Now, weirdly, it doesn't cut the dexterity requirement in half. You using it in 2 hands. Dexterity is always, you always need to be at that value to use it. Now, what happens if you're not at the value? So if I can find a faith, but I demonstrated it earlier actually whilst trying to demonstrate this dragon spear. It says you cannot use it effectively. Basically, all the stats on it get nerfed into the ground, and why is it? And it flows okay, but when there's a strength requirement, I think it's too sluggish and the combos don't work properly. And any special abilities like the lightning bolt this thing casts can't be used when you're not meeting the requirements. So the requirement system is good. I like this. Works well for dexterity, works well for strength. They're a little bit different to each other, but it's not the end of the world, and it's not overly confusing. Back over... Why do I feel like my controller's died? Back over onto the statistics menu for the 3rd hour now. Intellect and faith here down at the bottom. The intellect relates to sorceries, which is this magic BNS here, magic bonus. And this is the damage done by blue magic, magic from staffs, magic within the sorcery tree. Faith relates to lightning. Lightning with being miracles and, you know, yellow spells essentially, from the cleric stuff. These two don't do anything overly hidden here. But what they do also do is contribute to cast speed in a very sneaky way. Now I'm afraid I just need two person. I just need a minute to take a leak, and then I'll be right back. I'm afraid I can't pause it, so if you just skip 30 seconds ahead, I should have returned and I should be wittering about fire scaling and lightning scaling. Apologies, that was too much coffee this afternoon trying to get myself through Crown of the Sunken King, the first DLC from the game, although I think it was the last to release, but it was the first chronologically. Boom! More Dark Souls confusion. Great DLC though. If you played the game, not the DLC, do pick them up. They're pretty much just better than the main game in terms of everything. Okay, so now we have one of the most awesome systems of Dark Souls 2. And now this I believe did exist back in Dark Souls 1, it just might have worked a little bit differently. We have pyromancies and we have dark spells as well, and these are impacted through faith and intelligence in a really cool way. Pyromancies is obviously the fire stuff, and these all scale with the fire BNS value that we see here. Increasing. I'm so used to pointing with my finger, not my mouse. Fire BNS. Now, Fire BNS scales with the sum of your intelligence and your faith. So if you have, and the soft cap is at when the sum is 60. So if you have 30 intelligence, 30 faith, then you've hit the soft cap. If you have 20 intelligence, 40 faith, then you've hit the soft cap for Fire BNS. Now what this means, because this is big, this is really big, This means that an intellect build or a faith build can reliably use very well scaled pyromancies alongside either its sorcery or its miracles. Now, since pyromancies are so good for PvP in a lot of areas, it's fantastic because sorceries have some spells which are really good for PvP. Not all of them, definitely not all of them. Whereas miracles, they're more of a PvE thing, and to be honest, I don't really. Yeah, there are some which are good for PvP. Yeah, you're gonna miracle of God spam people down if you know what that is, and things like that. If you're into that kind of thing, but like the core moves of it, the heals and the lightning spears, you've got to be a bloody wizard to pull them off in PvP or be playing against somebody who's sleeping. So by giving a kind of an additional magic system and tying it in using a statistic you're going to develop in either tree, I think is genius. I really love the way this works, rather than giving it a stat of its own, because it just covers a few more bases. Now, Dark BNS here, what a crazy stat this is. This is the opposite almost of the Flame one. It still scales from intellect and faith, but instead of scaling from the sum, it scales from the lowest. So, if you have 50 intellect, 10 faith, your Dark BNS will scale from your 10 faith. If it's the other way around, it'll scale from the lower one again. Now what this means is if you want to play a Hexer, you have to level both up together. Pyromancer, you can do, doesn't really matter which one's higher. You know, if this is intellect, we'll make this an I, and that's kind of like an F. Okay, so if this is intellect and this is kind of faith, there's probably fuck it, this is faith. People will work it out. Sorcery, you go boom. For a cleric or a miracle person, you go boom. For a hexer, you go boom at the same time, and for a pyromancer, you can go boom, boom, or boom. It also means hexers can use pyromancies and be just as good with them. What a great system to create 4 spellcasting stats, 4 spell schools out of 2 statistics. I love that, and I think it's fantastically well done. Where they got it from, I don't know. It may have been used in the old game, I can't remember. I seem to remember pyromancies being included earlier in the game than they were in this one. Significantly earlier. I think you could even start as one, whereas in this game you can't. We'll get to that later. Hopefully not too much later, because it's probably, yeah, it's like 2 o'clock here. Okay, right then, what else have we got? Oh my god, right, okay. Fire, lightning, dark, and magic defense. These stats are very similar to the way physical defense works. You get a 0.11% reduction from each point, so you get less reduction. I think you get 0.2 in physical from each point, but there is no hidden cap. By the time you hit 900 in any one of these resistances, you become immune to that element. So that probably tells us that the curve for physical defense, based on the fact that it gives you twice as much, probably starts curving over very heavily and tops out at the kind of probably about 450 range. I guess that might be some terrible mathematics, but it's late, so forgive me. But we'll see. No, it doesn't curve out that early. Fuck it, never mind. That was wrong. But these, when you get them to 900, you're immune. And they basically, you get it goes up and down, so you get a little bit of defense, more defense, less defense, depending on how high you've kind of leveled your intelligence and things like that. So your intelligence gives you more contribution in the mid levels, less in the early and the late. Oh my god, thank god for that. That is done. That is statistics. I am definitely going to put a button there for people to click and skip past that section if they understand how they already work, because what a bloody slog that was. But that does explain why this system is so convoluted. I mean, we've got multiple soft caps, hidden caps, stats we can interact with, stats we can't interact with, which are derived from other stats. We have hidden stats, we have hard caps, linear gradients, curves, exponentials, we have alternate, we have incremental on alternate levels, we have incremental from contribution from multiple skills, we have a falsified skill floor, we have all sorts of stuff that nobody could, I would go as far as to say no one human could have worked out how all these things worked without having some insider knowledge. Definitely not in a single playthrough. It would have required hundreds of hours of testing. So a system that no one player can understand on their own and they're first to communicate. Hey, I tell you what, it fosters a great community. But I tell you what, that would be a very cheeky excuse if they tried to use that. Testing brings the community together. Anyway, let's continue and on to the more simple things. Now, I would like to stab something. Can I stab something? I think I can stab something. I've talked at great length
Of course not.
about attributes, so let's go into souls, the thing this damn game is made for. Let's go to the Forest of the Fallen Giants and kill some trash mobs that I can't get killed by. There are three things with regard to souls. There is soul count, soul level, and soul memory. Soul count is being given is the amount of souls that you currently have on your person. So it's the 40,000 mark that we see my player currently carrying. This basically functions exactly like a currency. You take this back to town and you spend this. Now, spending this, we can see three things up here. My current level, otherwise known as soul level, my number of souls currently, and my required souls to level up. So this is current level, current souls, and souls required to level up. So I have 40,000 souls. It only takes me 26,000 to level up. So if I was to go back to Majula, without having died, I can buy a new attribute point, and my soul level will increase by 1. Now, in the original Dark Souls, the way matchmaking was handled was based on soul level. It looked for people in and around your soul level, so it was kind of like plus minus 5 or 10, depending on how high a level you were. Now, in Dark Souls 2, it doesn't. It uses soul memory. Now, what soul memory is this value here. It is the total number of souls that your player has received, not spent, received in the game. Now, let me explain why this is an important system. In the Dark Souls 1 community, something bizarre happened. In the PvP community, players started capping themselves, and they set a community-driven cap, and everybody stopped leveling PvP characters at about soul level 125. I think it was 125. It's 125 on this one was the original goal, so I assume it is. Yeah, it was 125. And basically what this meant is everybody played on fair ground, and there wasn't an awful lot of players on the PC, you see. I mean, it was a very popular game, did very well, but getting into the PvP in Dark Souls is friggin', like, it's impossible. For most players to just... You need to go online and read things and understand covenants and try out different items, and it's not a simple, hey, here's a button, search for a fight. There was definitely a lot more of that in Dark Souls 1. There was locations you could go and look for fights, and there are some locations in this game, but they're not very well explained. So getting into PvP was tough, issue number 1. Issue number 2, working out how to get into PvP was tough. Getting in was easy once you knew. 2, matchmaking issues. Matchmaking issues, you need players your level who are looking to fight in your location. Because you have to put a sign on the floor, they have to click on the sign and this sort of thing, and so they've got to be around your level. So everybody agreed to stay at about level 125. This kind of fostered a fair fight, so everybody was in and around the same level, and there was never an issue trying to find somebody to fight. So everybody did this. The PvP scene all did this, and it created this kind of temporary PvP haven where we could all play and have a laugh and actually find matches. Now, here's what happens in Dark Souls 2. Matchmaking is handled through soul memory, not through soul level. Now, let's explain what this does to the PvP community. When it was soul level 125, it meant you could be as strong as you possibly wanted to be for soul level 125, and min-maxing became a phenomenally big part of the game. It was about how can I be as powerful as I can possibly be whilst only being soul level 125. This was fun. However, it had an exploit, and the exploit was a player in New Game, in their first playthrough, would not have access to the same equipment always that players maybe who'd stayed at soul level 125 but played into like New Game Plus and New Game Plus Plus and New Game Plus 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 because they were sick at Dark Souls. So you got some very, very experienced players capping themselves at 125, even though they had no statistical advantage. They were very experienced. There's issue 1. Issue 2 was the fact they got access to new gear in subsequent playthroughs, and you could easily reach soul level 125 in your first playthrough, so you'd be playing people in New Game Plus who'd help themselves back. And you kind of... It was this twinking system, if you're familiar with the term from MMOs, which is where you keep yourself at a set level and gear yourself up as well as you possibly can be for that level, so people just passing through that level don't stand a chance, based on matchmaking. So there was the issue, but honestly it worked very well, and I much prefer it to this one. Now in this game, matchmaking is all done on soul memory. Now here's the issue with soul memory. Take 2 people. Take Dark Souls Pro and me. Dark Souls Pro plays through the game and he picks up his millionth soul. He's only died twice. He's maybe lost himself 50,000 souls and he's gained 1 million total. He spent 1 million total souls. 1 million total souls. He spent 950,000 total souls on developing his character. What about me? What if it's my first time playing the game and I've died something reasonable 150 times and I have lost 450,000 souls worth of XP? That means I am fighting somebody on a character who has spent 950,000 souls on developing their level, their gear, their attributes, and all things like that, and I've maybe spent half as much. Now this is interesting. This is a very exploitable system. This means on Dark Souls 2, if you want to be as powerful as physically possible, the goal is to re-roll a new character, get to the gear you want with killing as little as possible and absorbing as few souls as possible. This is bizarre. This encourages people to... It really makes kind of speed runs and exploit runs the way to do things if you're trying to build a PvP character. Now, tied into this, there is also items... do you buy it from Strayed? There is also a ring that basically absorbs your souls so they don't go into your soul memory. So there is that item, which is essentially it's the cap that existed in Dark Souls 1 artificially, but it means you have to equip it, and it means that you have to keep this item equipped, and you just don't want to do that to do it. It's not a bad idea, but it takes up a slot and things like that. It's just not what you want. So there's the issue with Soul Memory. You can find yourself fighting somebody substantially stronger just because it's trying to balance the game on experience, not on character strength. Now, balancing on experience is all well and good. It makes a lot of sense, balancing players on playtime. It's what first-person shooters do. But in first-person shooters, you do not get a power discrepancy as big as you get in Dark Souls. So I don't think it's suitable. And that's a shame. It also makes summoning friends and stuff a pain in the butt. It means you can't boost them. You need to pick up rings that increase your bracket. So you can kind of match with people a higher percentage above and below your soul level and stuff like that. And it's just convoluted and it's a pain in the friggin' butt. Okay, next, Min-Max's Bane. Let's quit, and this should take me back to main menu. Min-Max's Bane is, for me, starting class. Dark Souls 2 butchered starting classes, I think. Now, it's reduced in impact from Dark Souls 1. Now in Dark Souls 1, because you handled everything on soul level, not soul memory, you wanted to pick the starting class which had the statistics that you wanted in your final build, which means you had to decide your final build before you started playing the game if you're going to actually maximize a character. And this can be very substantial. It can make as much difference as 20 or 30 soul levels within certain builds. However, in Dark Souls 2, it's not as impactful because we use soul memory now and not soul levels, but giving all the starting classes very, very different stats can be a little frustrating and a little stressful for certain players wanting to why can't I type? Please let me type. There we go. Can be a little frustrating because you kind of got to decide your build and you've got to understand how everything works and stuff like that. There we go, Naked Boy will do. Class and gift. Here we go, classes. Each of the classes all start with different gear, and they all start with different stats, and you can see the stats displayed in the bottom right here. There's no issue with that. Clarity is fine. You can check what they all do, ish. It's ish because 2 fingers is not enough. And basically you have to pick the starting class. Now sadly I think this has been a bit butchered because every time I've played the game I've had to play the bandit, and I just want to start as a swordsman, or I want to start as somebody with a bit of diversity. Now yes, you can start with some of these, you start with some spells on some of them, but for example even starting the game playing a cleric, you don't necessarily do this if you want to build the optimal cleric. You might have to start the game as the bandit if you want to build a cleric that's going to use a sword and miracles and stuff like this, because you're trying to kind of twink yourself for your level and min-max yourself for your set level, and it gives you loads of wasted statistics. The best example of this is swordsman. If you're going to try and build a dual wield cleric or something weird like that, you want to start yourself off with a swordsman with a load or a dexterity cleric. You want to start yourself off with a class with loads of dexterity like this. So you can see we've got 16 in dexterity, 5 in faith, but it's given me 7 in intelligence, and that means that's 7 levels wasted that I could have had 7 more points in faith. And this is weird. I'm not overly a fan. I liked it back on Dark Souls 1 a bit, where you could start as a deprived with very low stats and everything and kind of tweak it up as you liked, and I would much prefer to see the deprived in Dark Souls 3 feature a 1-1-1-1-1-1-1. So players looking to build optimally can all just start deprived, and that's just the way we do things. I'd love that. Or at least make sure that bandit isn't the best in everything except intelligence. Basically, if you're going to put points in every single attribute, and to do this basically means that you're building a quality cleric. If you build a quality cleric And it basically anything other than a sorcerer, pretty much starting as a bandit, is normally the best, assuming you're going to be investing in adaptability and your iframes and your health and some stamina and some equip load. The only time when you don't do this is when you're looking to exploit very specific items that maybe require a very low equipment load, and the bandit starts with a very high equip load and things like this. So there's absolute crap with these. It's not the end of the world because, like I say, we've swapped across to Soul Memory now, but it just feels a bit odd. It just feels a little bit odd. So, God, I forgot how ugly this game looks without mods. Weapon progression. Now, weapon progression is one of the most interesting areas of Dark Souls 2. Weapons have statistics and weapons have scaling. They have base damage values and scale damage contributions. And in reality, let's just hop across into my other character where I have a weapon of every type. Save and quit game. Yes, joys. Yeah, so we have base damage values and scaling values. Now, we had a look at weapon requirements before, where some weapons require dex and some weapons require strength, some weapons require certain values in intelligence or faith, or both even, sometimes. Sometimes is there one? I think there's one. To actually use, and this sort of thing. But additionally, we have a scaling system. Now, the scaling system is one more area where Dark Souls 2 is confusing as crap. Weapon scaling is the next area in Dark Souls 2 of vertical progression. Now, if I was to equip, we can see here I have a Hide Knight sword and a Fire Longsword, two of the first weapons you find in the game. The 78 value we see here is the base physical, and the 35 is my contribution from my current statistics. So this gives me 78 physical, 78 fire, 35 and 15. This is a weapon which aligns with what it says. Fire Longsword says I have a D scaling with strength, a D class scaling with dexterity, and a C class scaling with fire. So it means it scales better with fire. So that means you would expect, since both values are 78 or 78, that the C scaling, a C scaling is better than D scaling, so my fire would increase by more than my physical, but obviously we have two physical things feeding into it, so it gets a bit confusing. And this is the issue. Without going too in depth about all the different weapon types and all the different issues, the problem with this system is that when it says A, B, C, D, S, it's not specific, and sometimes a weapon will say S scaling and it actually gives you scaling from the C category, from the kind of very low. So an S, it'll be like 90% of your dexterity attack bonus gets added on, whereas a C scaling will be like sub 30%, and things like this. And the letters do not always represent the actual values on the weapons. Now, I'm going to try and put a table up here, not the table but a link. If you want to see how crazy scaling is, click that, because it's a list of every weapon in the game, and it's scaling without infusion, so non-enchanted weapons and how they scale with different attributes, and it shows that they are not uniform. There is no alignment with so there's only very, very vague alignment when it says it's an S or an A or a B, and this is an annoying system. I would much rather one of two things. They gave me detailed statistics on how a weapon scales, so they say 0.5 of dex rather than giving me a C. But if they're gonna say C, make C a damn flat value. Make an A always give A, B always, S always give 100%, A always give 80%, B always give 60%. But I don't want that in Dark Souls. They have intricately balanced probably nearly 100 weapons, and probably even more than 100 weapons, intricately balanced based on their moveset statistics and raw damage, and the way all the infusions work. I just think they need to expose this value so players in the game can both see how it does scale and why it's giving you the bonus that it's giving you. And when you're leveling up and infusing weapons, you know what you're going to get, because this is a massive issue. If we travel to Steady Hand Macduff, where are you, Steady? Here. Boom, boom. I think he's got Steady Hand Macduff anyway. Sometimes you'll be infusing a weapon with fire. And when I infuse a weapon with fire, I might change. Actually, let's just get a bloody example. It's trying to explain stuff. People are probably knackered. I know I am. Infuse a weapon. So let's imagine I'm going to take my... Is this going to work? Yes. Awesome. So I take my Hailed Knight Sword, and this has a C in Strength, C in Dex, and C in Faith or Lightning Scaling. Now, if I was to hover over this, it says that my Strength and my Dex scaling go down to a D, and my Lightning goes blue. So does that mean it's a better C? My damage goes up, so it must be a better C. And this is the problem. C is a bracketed range that you don't get any more details in, and now not all of these are right. Some of these are messy, they are horrible. When they say they take you down to a D scaling, they'll absolutely cripple you. Now, the most prevalent examples of this is when you take a weapon like the Puzzling Stone Sword, or a weapon that has an S scaling in Dexterity. This one happens a lot. When you have an S scaling in Dexterity and you infuse a weapon with Lightning or something, or Fire, and it says it keeps its S scaling, very, very rarely does it actually keep a value even remotely representing an S scale. It much more often goes down to like a B or a C, but gives you the impression it stays up to a C. And these are non-reversible. Oh, okay. You lose the item it costs you to do it, and then you have to reset it and use other items and stuff like this. So you see, I have to use a Pale Stone here to do this, and I might have to use a Bolt Stone to enchant it with Lightning. So I end up wasting 2 materials testing something out that I should never have had to test out in the first place. It should have told me flat what it was going to do, and yes, it tells me the damage values over on the right hand side, but that requires this item to be equipped and things like that to actually compare it properly. And it requires that you're going to retain the statistical proportions that your character currently has. And what I mean by this is if you're enchanting a weapon with Lightning, it's gonna show you the statistics based on your current faith, not your faith when it grows and things like this. It needs to expose these statistics basically and tell me, instead of C, how much does this scale with? What percentage of my Lightning bonus damage is going to add to this? What percentage of my strength bonus damage, physical attack bonus damage is going to add to this? Because so much testing had to go into this game to work out what percentage gets added on, and I just don't think it was fair on the guys in the community that had to go through the painstaking effort of ruining all their weapons, wasting all their bolt stones, alt-tabbing 4 million times. So you can't alt-tab because the game stops you alt-tabbing, so you can't do this. So you have to do other things like crashing the process. I hate that. I hate having to crash a process just so I don't waste an item to find out what it actually does. That's annoying, but that's basically weapon scaling in a nutshell. Now, what I will say, that is annoying. Not telling me how it works is annoying. What is fantastic is that it exists. This saved Dark Souls 2 combat for me. Yes, there are loads of people that take issue with the level design, the encounter design, the hitboxes, reusing enemies from previous games and all that crap. I don't take as much issue as some other people do. But this is a very long game, and for me to retain my interest over a very long game, you've got to give me diversity. And one of the ways it does that is by encouraging hybrid builds. And this is one of the things I set out to talk about, why I think they're so well done. By making weapons scale from numerous different statistics, they make investing in numerous statistics worthwhile. And the best example I can think of this is the Blue Knight Halberd compared to the Black Knight Halberd. Now, these are both extraordinarily powerful weapons. One of them scales with strength and dex. One of them scales with strength, dex, and fire. And it's been fire infused now. Weapons with 3 scaling options, more often than not, are substantially more powerful than weapons with 2 scaling options. Even if you've got like a BB, a B in strength, a B in dex, more often than not, having a BB, having a CC B will be way better. So try scaling is highly encouraged, and obviously you're building extra statistics, and since you've got those statistics anyway, you may as well take the magic that goes with them. So almost all the builds can actually have magic in them in this game, and I really like this. I mean, just to put things into perspective, the Blue Knight's Halberd is one of the most powerful quality weapons in the game, and a quality build in this game is when you build strength and dexterity together and focus on physical attack damage. But in comparison, the Black Knight's Halberd, which is one of the most powerful clerics or fire-based weapon alongside a quality build, dwarfs it. Absolutely dwarfs it. I will do about 3, and this is still one stage off fully upgraded on this save. This will do about 360 damage flat with a quality build, which is what we see here, which is the current build I've got going. This weapon, by comparison, is already doing 500 damage, 300 as physical, 200 as fire, on a build with no investment in fire bonus. This weapon will go up to like 600, 700, far more with enchants and stuff like that. It's mental how powerful you can get hybrid magic melee weapons, and also some of the bows. Putting lightning on bows works well too. So I love that it encourages magic use through multi-stat scaling. I definitely want to see more of this in Dark Souls 3. I just think they've got to make sure they take care of the people that want to use the physical weapons without the magic as well, because it feels like the least interesting part of the game is building for quality. Even building a solo focus, a strength or dex, pretty much the best scaling you can get. You get 100% contribution from dexterity or 100% contribution from strength. There might be a couple that exceed 100% contribution. But by comparison, there's plenty of weapons, like for example the Black Knight Halberd. I think you get about 30% from strength, you get about 60% from dexterity, so there's you're already up to kind of 90% contrib across two statistics, and then it gives you like another 45 from fire, and this is uninfused, and this weapon doesn't lose a lot of scaling when you infuse it, and this is the problem, that it just gets chaos, and hybrid magic builds become too powerful, and non-hybrid builds in this game get nerfed. So we have that. What else have we got? Oh my god, we have an upgrading system, the reinforcing weapons and armor. Now I talked about this a little bit earlier, I just want to demo it very quickly. You take a fire longsword, just let me kill my camera. You take a fire longsword, you spend a titanite shard here to upgrade it to a fire longsword +1, and its statistics are going to go from a 78 to an 86. Dead simple. The scaling apparently can also increase with this, so as you can see I'm going from a it's going to go up, the scaling, the D and the C are both going to increase. The D apparently is going to go to a B next time I improve it, and this is cool. I like this system. It feels to some degree like it forces you to invest and choose which weapons you really like. It does discourage weapon switching, it does encourage grinding and farming points, and yes, there is a lot of wasted investment in Dark Souls in general, and wasted investment, I mean you buy things that you're going to ditch later, and because you've had to spend souls on them and currency and resources on them, you're now not as strong as you could be if you went straight for your final build, in comparison to your soul level or your soul memory. Now this is okay for the most part. From a PvE perspective there's absolutely no problem, it just means you grind a bit more. it basically, you need different resources. It goes up from Titanite shards to large Titanite shards, and you use a couple more each time. Titanite chunk, and then we eventually go up to Titanite slabs. And they basically, each of those slabs are gated at the right points in the game. You can maybe get some a little early, but that means you can only get one of your weapons to be really good early on, and then you kind of have to wait. Actually, yeah, because on most playthroughs I get a fire longsword to like a +7, +8, like pretty early in the game. So it can be done, and it's a little exploitable, but for the most part it's absolutely fine. You also have two other types. You have Twinkling Titanite, which are just kind of a fun little exploration thing. They're for semi-special weapons, and you receive these from some chests and shiny little gem bugs, and you have to run after them and chase them, and they get you killed all the time because you're running after them because you want Twinkling Titanite so much. You run into a room full of monsters and die. So that's Dark Souls 2 being a dick, and there's plenty of that. There's so many times I chase globs in the DLC as well, where sometimes they like pour out the walls, loads of them, and you're so excited. You're running around trying to kill them all because you want all this Twinkling Titanite, and things just go very badly very quickly. It's very funny. So I like Twinkling Titanite. I think they've done a very funny job with that, and I love it. There is also Petrified Dragon Bones. These are a pain in the butt. Basically, you only really get Petrified Dragon Bones from killing very big bosses or finding them in very specific chests. You only get a few through the game, and these are for upgrading boss weapons. Weapons you acquire through killing bosses, pretty much. These can be farmed through an exploit. Don't like that, obviously. It's not exactly an exploit, but you force a specific area of the game into a New Game Plus mode, essentially using an item called the Bonfire Aesthetic, and you continually just run through picking up Petrified Dragon Bones. Gives you a new Bonfire Aesthetic, you force it to the next stage of New Game Plus, and you just continually farm this in a DLC zone. So some of these are exploitable, so min-maxers can do it, leaving other people in the dust more, but for the most part they're fine, and this system's alright. It just increases damage incrementally as you go through the game. I guess the game is about stats at the end of the day. It's not, but a big part of the game is actually about stats and maths, because RNG just doesn't exist in this game. Anywhere? Anywhere, I don't think. So we have this. What else do we have? Yeah, progression system. The fact that even this enchanting here that we're talking about is locked behind an event at a certain point in the game when this becomes available. I like this idea of gating off permanent or semi-permanent choices and stop people wasting all the materials early on shit weapons they don't like. What I would have liked to have seen is them give the player a greater variety, a greater diversity of enchanted weapons prior to this point, so people had a more informed decision of how they were going to use these, shards and things like that, and these infusements, yeah, that's a word. What are they called? Stones. So the Poison Stone, Dark Knight, Bolt Stone, Fire Drake, Raw Bleed, and all that stuff. Because that just would have made a lot more sense. It's already gating it off anyway. Okay. Weapon and armor acquisition. This is a monstrous bit of the game and a huge bit of Fashion Souls. I never picked this up. Twinkling Titanite. Always want the Twinkling Titanite. Boom. Happy days. That's because I Bonfire Aesthetic the area earlier. I forgot about that. Yeah, okay. Here's the way you get new gears in the game. Chests, like we just saw then. This is okay. I don't like this in open world games, and in some RPGs. I recently condemned it in a review of a Final Fantasy game because they're so easy to miss in that. In this game, it's about secrets and exploration and mystery, so finding cool gear in chests I think is okay. And they do another nice system whereby these wooden chests are destructible and can be destroyed like that, and you'll get nothing out of them if you destroy them. These metal ones cannot. So they often put very good gear in these chests and they keep it safe and it stays there and they don't respawn. I know they do respawn in subsequent playthroughs. So I like this system. Chest stuff works for me. And they also put stuff on bodies on the ground glowing, just on like random corpses you'll see as you're playing through the game. They're fine. Mob drops is an interesting one. I don't know how I feel about it. Certain NPCs drop certain items. These dogs are probably going to wreck me because they're like 400 New Game Plus levels above me. Oh, that's weird. They're not. No, did we just find a level boundary? It might change from one zone to another there. Or maybe I was just too close and hit it with the wrong bit of the sword. Where was I? Yeah, mob drops is interesting. I'm a bit conflicted. I typically don't like RNG based systems for loot. I think it can be time consuming. The grinding is typically not very fun. And because Dark Souls 2 features a system where after you've killed the enemies in an area a certain number of times they'll stop respawning. If you're trying to grind for a weapon, I think the most noticeable one is here in the Iron Keep. A lot of people who were trying to go for a dexterity build farm this area to get it's not the Chaos Blade, not the Berserker Blade, what's it bloody called? The Blacksteel Katanas. Now these Blacksteel Katanas are only available, as far as I know, dropping from these Alone Knights. And the problem is, they're bloody rare. I've sat here and farmed using farming equipment designed to give me gear drops for hours before and not had one. And on the same thing, I've run through, I've killed 2 knights in a row and had 2. I don't like a system that rewards RNG particularly. But what I do like is it's an okay way to discover stuff as you're going through the game. But I would maybe do a hidden kill counter, so maybe when you kill 10 you get one, rather than RNGesus, because it's nothing more annoying. I do love that you can trade. That is so good though. If I get these weapons, go online with somebody, I can drop them and they can have them. Love that. That's cool. We also get vendors. Vendors in the game are bloody weird. I'm going to come back to them. No, fuck it, we'll do them now. Vendors are crazy. What is available from a vendor is dependent on a few things. The furthest boss you've killed in the game. So as you kill more bosses, vendors that you come across will have more items available to them. Just checking out and aggro them. So yeah, so that works okay, and that's a very event-driven progression system tied into a kind of a currency system, and that's okay, you know. It's all right. Additionally, you have a money spent system. This is another hidden system of Dark Souls 2. Basically, the more money you spend at a vendor, not all vendors, but some vendors, they get new items. And some of the items are really bloody good. This armor I'm wearing here, the Alva armor set, is one of the most efficient armors in the game for physical resistance versus its weight, and it is unlocked by spending 15,000 souls at the vendor in the hub, basically, and then I've got it for the entire game. So it's a bit exploitable if you just invest heavily in it, but it's an okay system because you kind of watch the lore of the vendors grow and stuff as you go through the game. We also have the thing I really don't like is that some of the vendors are tied to character statistics. Most noticeably, one of the 2 most important vendors in the entire game. 2 people. Blacksmith Ornifex and Strayed. These are people that you trade boss souls with. Now bosses do not drop regular souls, you know, that add to your soul counter. They drop something called a boss soul, and a boss soul basically straight sell. A boss soul basically lets you trade it in for a weapon or a unique spell, because that is actually the point. You can get new weapons, new armor, and new spell enchants and new spells through this system. I'm fucked. And I have unequipped my weapon to re-equip my bow. Oops. Oh, although my resistances are really high now. Yes, so this is a bit weird. They also do some absolutely criminal things, and this is my favourite example. This vendor here you have to unlock through a series of weirdness. They also put the vendor next to a pile of NPCs with AoE attacks which can kill him. You can kill the most important vendor in the game, arguably. He's also the most annoying vendor in the game because he will not trade with you unless you have 3 intelligence. Which means you have to invest 3 intelligence and waste 2 skill level ups on the bandit if you actually want to trade with Strayed. Stupidly, if you reset all your stats after you've spoken to him once, having had 3 intelligence, you can continue to trade with him. Stupid system. Just sod it. Let him sell to thick people. Who cares? Don't make me break my build just to buy from this specific vendor, because I'm going to do it and then I'm just going to waste a soul vessel. There's the ring I was talking about earlier that absorbs all my souls to stop me getting my soul memory too high. And this is the example of... no. Here's the example of boss soul weapons. Basically, I love this system. This is the primary system for me that adds satisfaction in Dark Souls. Dark Souls is a frustrating game. Losing progress by losing souls when you die against a boss and don't manage to recover them, it is one of the most frustrating things I've experienced in gaming. It can really piss you off and die into a boss that you've got to work your way back to through a long build-up in the map, and then die into it, losing your souls, and die into it, losing your souls. It just drives you mental some days. When you're learning the game, it's not so bad when you know it, but the rewards for bosses are often very good, and they give you very cool, very unique weapons, and you literally just trade the soul, he gives you a weapon, and then there's sometimes a nice choice between a few different playstyles. I like this, because I haven't spoken about it at all, but obviously my philosophy for progression systems is that they must do 3 things. They must make the game better, they must reward all playstyles, and they must have a certain degree of satisfaction. And I think it goes without saying that the progression system makes Dark Souls 2 better. I think it goes without saying that it rewards all playstyles, particularly with the hybrid stuff. Yes, some get neglected a little bit with the quality build and stuff like that, with the strength dex builds. And I think this boss soul is the primary source of satisfaction in the game. Getting a new substantially cool weapon is very, very satisfying, and I couldn't support that decision more. I just couldn't support it more. I really do hope that continues in Dark Souls 3. Oh my god, there is also weapons you receive through NPC relationships. There are NPCs you meet through the games with storylines, and you basically have to talk to them all the time. You have to find them in every location they are in the game, and then you have to summon them on 3 bosses. You have to kill 3 bosses with them there, and then you get their gear. It's different for some of them, but that's basically the gist of how it works. Cool system, cool reward, very distinctive weapons. Some of them are critical to certain builds. I like this. It's complex. It's exciting. It's not particularly efficient, and the NPC AI frequently get themselves killed on bosses, and they're a pain in the ass. But it's okay. The other angle is often you can just kill the NPC and take their gear. I love the option. If somebody's pissing me off and I don't want to do their quest line, I can just kill them, deal with the consequences, and take their weapon now at the start of the game. Again, another great way you can do stuff. There are events that give you gear, most noticeably stuff like the Head of Vangal in the Shaded Woods. Specific area of the game you go to, you speak to a guy, you do something he tells you to do, and you get a full set of his gear. Happy days. There are covenants, which are basically in-game factions that you join, and you have to do certain things and level up the covenant. So the simplest one, I guess, is probably the Sunbro. Sunbros are basically the big shiny co-op guys of Dark Souls 2, and basically as you help out more and more people online, you level up Sunbros. You level up Sunbros, you kind of get like a new sword at like 10 or 20 helps, and then you get like a super lightning spear miracle, at like 30 helps. So the covenants are crazy. You never know what you're going to get later in them, and there's some really good weapons from covenants. And annoyingly though, sometimes like the weapon you really want for a specific build is not in a covenant that suits your playstyle. So if you're not into PvP and you want like a whip that does load of bleed damage, I don't think it's the notched whip. This might be the notched whip. But there's certain gear that... oh no, sorry, it's the bleed gloves. And you can only get things like this through like the PvP covenants and other stuff. But I do like it because it encourages, you know, you to go out and try different ways of playing the game, get involved in PvP, get involved in defensive PvP, get involved in New Game Plus and hard modes, get involved in the Dragon Covenants and the dueling. It does encourage you to experience everything the game has to offer. It just locks a lot of the game behind mystery, and mystery is such a huge part of getting anywhere in this game. Oh my god, we are basically done. Estus flasks. This isn't the final. This is the final area of progression that exists within this game. Estus flasks are these things. I'm sure oh no. Oh dear. That's not what I wanted to do. No, bonfire. I'm invulnerable, sort of. Estus flasks are basically the primary recovery item in the game if you don't understand how it works. You get a flask. It has a limited number of heals and it's a refillable potion. Essentially, here it is. And we can see that I have I have the need to, oh no, I can't do it. Okay, but basically I have 11 uses, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. And every time I chug that, my health goes up. Estus flasks progress in two ways. The quantity of uses that can be used between bonfires, and these are controlled by Estus flask shards. You find these all over the game world. These are an exploration bonus. Yeah, basically you open in chests and you find a shard and it's happy days. Loads of them are on bodies. Like I said, I got like what, 11 in this playthrough without really trying. So I think it's 9. I think you start with 2. But like there's one down the well here in Majula. You knock a little rock off and this body pops up and it's got one on. I love this. It just makes you try stuff out and whack walls and look for secret areas. And it grows throughout the game and makes the game a little bit less frustrating as it goes on, because you don't run out of Estus, but it does diminish the importance of some of the recovery items. Then you also have the buff of the Estus flask where it says Estus flask plus 5. Plus 5 is the quantity of health that it heals, and it just helps the flask scale in the game. Yeah, helps the flask scale in the game, and to do this you need Sublime Bone Dust, and then you need to burn the Sublime Bone Dust in the bonfire in Majula. You can burn it in the other bonfires, but I've never been brave enough to see if it actually applies the effect. It says burn it here, so I've always burnt it here. And oh my god, that is it. We are done. So, 5 things I'd change about Dark Souls 2's progression system. The soft caps and the multi-scaling weapons are brilliant, but they need to add better scaling for hybrid builds. And they need to add a hybrid infusement or have better scaling for hybrid weapons in the next game, so that quality builds and dex and strength focused builds can become more of a thing. Yes, they do exist, but no, they are not as fun, they're not as exciting, and progression is just not as satisfying for those. Clarity gains need to be better, so clarity about what you're going to gain when you invest. Now this is with regards to statistics, weapon upgrades, weapon infusement. These need to be better. They need to give you more information on soft caps and diminishing returns, and less hidden statistics. Things like agility. You need to tell me that agility affects my iframes and things like this, so people shouldn't have to mess around with. And finally, weapon scaling. If it's not going to be uniform, so C always is a fixed value, D is always a fixed value, they just tell us the damn numbers, because I hate not knowing, and I hate that some of these letters are wrong, and I hate not knowing what's going to happen to my weapon when I infuse it properly, because even though it says it stays at an S, I know well that it doesn't. So things like this, that's a pain. So that's it. They're really the only things that I'd change, unless I came up with anything else in this 54-hour rant. That I can now not remember because I'm knackered. But that is it. That is Dark Souls 2. And its absurdly confusing progression systems for min-maxers. Whereas it's still fairly approachable for players who just want to run into the game, equip what they like, level up skills that they think look okay, and it works fine. But for the min-maxers, there's too much that's hidden. Far better information needs to be given by the game, and we just need a help menu where we hover over a skill or an ability or a stat or an infusement that gives us more detailed information on what it actually does, instead of making us experiment and waste resources and waste our time on working out how everything works. So that's it. That is Dark Souls 2. Absolutely hats off, congratulations, and thank you if you've managed to stay into the last minute. I know I wouldn't, and I know I will not be watching this video back before I upload it, because that's about all the Dark Souls 2 I can take for today. Anyone notice anything I fucked up, or they want to add anything, please do, because like I said right at the beginning, I'm not an expert. I've only played 150 hours, and I haven't even played those hours that recently, so please add it, please give me shit if appropriate, and happy gaming. Take it easy. Bye now.